Just in case you were wondering.
We'll do it over here.
Well, I need
You need your props. I can do the official first. Good evening, everybody. Before we officially start our meeting tonight, we have
Recording in
one of our
progress.
members-elect who will be getting sworn in as the Ward 8 seat is currently vacant. Victor Lee is eligible to join the committee before January 1st, so Mayor Fuller is going to swear him in.
Perhaps you could explain why only Ward 8 speaks.
Because Ward 8 is vacant.
January 1st. Raise your right arm. I, Victor Lee,
I, Victor Lee,
do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts
to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
and will support the Constitution thereof.
and will support the Constitution thereof.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I, Victor Lee,
I, Victor Lee,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform
discharge and perform
all the duties incumbent upon me
all the duties incumbent upon me
as a school committee member in the city of Newton,
as a school committee member in the city of Newton,
agreeably to the rules and regulations
agreeably to the rules and regulations
of the Constitution and laws
of the Constitution and laws
of this Commonwealth.
of this Commonwealth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I, Victor Lee,
I, Victor Lee,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
All right, congratulations, Victor, and welcome to the next 2 years of your life. All right, so let's officially call to order the November 17th, 2025 open meeting of the Newton School Committee. We will start tonight, as we do every night, with one of our fifth graders leading the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight from Cabot, we have Maya Fanselker, who is described by her teacher as kind and compassionate, a student who embraces any and all challenges that come her way. And while she has a love of all subjects, math and art appear to be the top of the list. She's a model student who advocates for herself and others. And on top of all of this, she is a star on the stage during the Cabot After School Play productions. So with that, if I could ask Maya to come up to the microphone up here to lead us in the pledge. And for everyone in the room, there's no obligation to participate, but if you are able and willing, please rise. The floor is yours, Maya. Fine.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you, Maya. Is there anything you'd like to share with everyone?
I would just like to thank my principal for giving me this opportunity, and that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, let's move to the public comment portion of our evening. We have 3 folks in the room who have signed up for public comment. Lisa, is there anyone online? We have no one online, so let's just go in order of the list here. We have Matthew Maloney, followed by Karen Tokis and Mike Zills. You have 3 minutes to make a public comment. At the 2.5-minute mark, Vice Chair Prenner here will give you the 30-second warning. And if you could please start just by stating your name and address.
So I'll correct you. My name's Matthew Malone. My address is 43 Delano Park in Rosendale. However, I fought for this country from 24 Indiana Terrace, 68 High Street, and 69 Rockland Place when I lived in Newton. My parents still live, and I appreciate being able to speak here tonight. Hello, Mayor. What a wonderful start to a meeting. Newton takes care of its own, recognizing students in such profound and purposeful ways. Tonight, I'm here to share with you a request to do the same, to recognize one of our own in this great city. That's my mother, Dr. Judy Malone Neville. She is someone in Newton who I cannot walk around this city and not get stopped and say, if it wasn't for your mother, I wouldn't be here today. That happens daily when I'm in the city of Newton. Now, I'll stand corrected if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's a school in the city that's named after a woman. For such a progressive place, I would pose it that perhaps it would be wise to take this recommendation, review it, and come to some sort of consensus where we can honor and recognize someone who's made such an impact in the city of Newton. 35 years of commitment. Now, before I talk about the commitment to the schools, first we'll talk about growing up and being a student in this city. Judy Malone Neville went to Oak Hill, Weeks, and she was an honor graduate of Newton High, class of 1960. She then became an employee in Newton in 1965. She left after that first year, marriage, family, but she came back in 1972 as an English teacher at Newton South High School, where she served as an English teacher until she left Newton South. But in I believe it was 78, they made her a housemaster at Cutler House. So she served as housemaster and English teacher because she loves to teach and she loves kids. She got promoted again to become the long-standing successful principal of Brown Junior High School, Brown Middle School. She did such a good job there that the superintendent said, I need you to be the assistant superintendent of schools.
You have 30 seconds.
Which she did until she retired. Then she retired, loving this city. She came back and served in several other communities, but it was her love of the city of Newton and her commitment to the students that we hold and cherish that makes her, in my opinion, someone worthy of your consideration and recognition of a naming right in this city, in our public schools. I will leave you the testimony that I've written, and I hope that you can include it in the record. And I would stand by, my phone number's on here. If anyone has any questions, I will gladly answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, if you want to leave that with Lisa, that will be part of the public record for this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker in the room is Karen Tokis, followed by Mike Zills.
Hello, my name is Karen Tokis. I've been a chemistry and biology teacher at Newton North since 2001. Good evening, Mayor Fuller, Dr. Nolan, members of the school committee. Thank you to all the engaged participants listening to this meeting in person and online. Tonight's agenda includes a presentation of the Newton Public Schools 2025 MCAS results and the district's project to align curriculum and implement common assessments. I previewed Dr. Flanagan's slides, and I expect to hear a cogent account of the project. I'm in attendance tonight to convey to Dr. Flanagan, Dr. Nolan, and the school committee that this presentation is not yet complete. Dr. Flanagan will summarize the work that has been done in service to the district's goals so far this year. But only workers can account for the impact of this project on the intellectual, emotional, skilled labor that we direct toward teaching and learning in Newton Public Schools. Chair Bresky, Vice Chair Prenner, you visited Newton North last month, and my colleagues described their experiences with the curriculum alignment project to you. This evening, please call our voices to mind when you have an opportunity to discuss Dr. Flanagan's presentation. Demonstrate to the newly elected school committee how direct dialogue with educators can improve the implementation of district's initiatives. I look forward to future discussions of the curriculum alignment and common assessment project that center educators and our expertise in this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker tonight is Mike Zills.
Hi, I'm Michael Zillis. I'm the president of the Newton Teachers Association, and I live at 39 Nonantum Street in Newton. I have 4 children that have gone through the Newton Public Schools. So I'm here to talk about the recent decision by the Superior Court to deny the appeal of the arbitrator with respect to the kindergarten aid grievance that we filed. The judge was unequivocal in utilizing the 2 cases that are the precedent for this case that was heard around kindergarten aids. And she was clear. Those 2 cases are convincing enough to say that our grievance was arbitrable and the arbitrator ruled in our favor. I don't know what more you would need to hear to restore the kindergarten aids. But I'm here to say to you, please do not delay this process unnecessarily any longer. The decision was made by the arbitrator and affirmed by the Superior Court, and the 2 decisions that are the key decisions that the judge ruled on were also cases that were presented to the Supreme Judicial Court. So if this is appealed to a higher court, the higher court, and in one case, just made that decision in 2019. You don't have a stand a chance of winning an appeal. The only reason for appealing again would be to further delay the process of restoring kindergarten aids. And I'm here to say we reached an agreement in 2019. In 2023, you violated that agreement. An arbitrator ruled against you. The appeals court has ruled against you. It's time to move forward. And I think it's really important that we move forward from this, in particular, to restore the trust between the educators of Newton and the Newton School Committee and the Newton Central Administration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I believe that concludes our public comment period for this evening. So let's move to our consent agenda. We have 4 items on the agenda this evening.
If I could, Mr. Chair, I just want to point out on the consent agenda that you're going to see a policy revision of just 2 alphabetical letters. Since we brought you the pathways recommendation, MASC, when we tried to file this with them, said, oh, you filed it under admissions because it is an admissions to a CTE program, but we would like you to file it under something else, and here it is. So we had to simply change 2 letters. So I just want you to know that.
Thank you for that clarification. So in addition to the 2-letter title policy change, we have the meeting minutes from our November 3rd meeting. We have a memo on out-of-state field trips, and we have a donation memo. Is there anything a member would like to pull from the agenda for further discussion? Okay.
Yeah.
Victor, please. Got to
one-
get in there right off the bat. I get it.
No, it's just a quick question for number 2, out-of-state field trips. Do we know if there were any accommodations or anything that was necessary in order to?
All right, so let's pull that out of the agenda for discussion if we're going to start asking questions and,
Okay,
okay. So
just number 2, yeah.
is there any other items a member would like to pull for further discussion? Okay, let's take a vote then on items 1,
Or I'll make a motion
Yes.
to approve. the
Thank you.
items.
1, 3, and
Exempting-
4,
Exempting the
field trips.
field trips.
Yes, items 1, 3, and 4 moved by Tamika. And second by Paul. Okay, let's take a vote on that motion. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2 is yes, Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Word 7, Ward 8.
Yes.
Felt good, didn't it? And Mayor Fuller.
In the city council, the first time a new member speaks, everybody claps. So I think this. Yes.
Okay, that passes 9-0. I was going to vote for the Gatorade bucket over the head, but the clap, I guess, is more appropriate. All right, Victor, your question on item number 2.
Yeah, it's just a point of clarification. Or were there any accommodations or anything that's necessary for special ed students in order to facilitate this out-of-state trip?
Sure, there were. So just as you get up to speed, so if you get me these questions before the meeting, I can bring you the answer specifically. But in every case, accommodations are made financially and programmatically to ensure that any student with a special need is accommodated. Now, many students with special needs attend without that need, but anything that is required must be done in order for everyone to attend.
We feel good about it.
I wouldn't be here if I didn't.
Perfect. Yeah. So, thank you.
Okay,
I move to
move approval.
approval for number 2, please.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Move number 2, moved by Victor,
second.
second by Emily. Let's take a vote on that, assuming there's no further discussion on that motion. Great. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2 is yes, Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 8,
Yes.
and Mayor Fuller.
Yes.
Okay, that passes 9-0, and the consent agenda is concluded. We'll move to our superintendent's update.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Just wanted to give some celebratory comments about our Veterans Day celebrations across the system. Books were also donated. Books about veterans and on behalf of veterans were donated by community members to every elementary school in the district this year. Veterans participated in both live and virtual readings, and we proudly honor our community and family members who are veterans and thank them for their service to our country. Our cadence of meetings was a little bit off, so this is the first time that we could say that. We will also put that in our district news to families this week as well. Family Math Night was held on November 13th, 2025 at Brown Middle School and provided an opportunity to share information with the community about improvements to our math program. The presentation is linked in the materials this evening and was led by our math leadership department team, which consisted of Oliver Ward, a teacher at Day Middle School, Brittany Brierly, a teacher at Day Middle School, Jennifer Letourneau, math department head at Newton North and teacher of math, Alex Kraus, math department head at Newton South High School and teacher of math, and Jennifer Shore, the pre-K to 22 math director for the district, and Dr. Gina Flanagan, assistant superintendent of teaching and learning. I also helped to moderate the event. There were 65 Newton caregivers attending in order to hear the overview. We had a fireside chat with our Newton Schools Foundation last week regarding STEM needs, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics budgetary needs for Newton Public Schools. It was focused on the future of STEM programming, and guest speakers joined us from the Boston Drone and Aeronautics School, which certifies students to become FAA certified drone pilots. And also our robotics partners who have proposed new electives for elementary students through Lego Robotics. And we hope that every elementary school will be using these materials in the future in our intervention and enrichment blocks. So there's a deep dive summary of that for anyone who's interested. And finally, I included just the most recent sports update, the Dalton Division rankings for Newton North and Newton South High School. For some reason, there was also a section on Newton Swim and Dive, which seems to have been deleted from this, but our girls took the Division I championship at Newton North High School. So congratulations to those girls. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions or comments for Dr. Nolan? Paul?
Comment just to thank you and congratulate you for reintroducing Veterans Day activities into the Newton Public Schools, which inexplicably had gone dormant for many years. I think it's a welcome addition. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Nolan? Okay. Great. Let's move on then to our discussion items for this evening. We have leading off the MCAS results presentation with Dr. Flanagan and Dr. Hoag.
So for those tuning in for the first time, Dr. Flanagan is our Assistant Superintendent for the Office of Teaching and Learning, and Dr. Hoag is our Chief of Data and Research. And they will share a report on MCAS data review for 2025. And as the perennial question that the school committee always asks, so what do we know and what are we going to do about it? So that is what is going to happen in this presentation.
Just having a little technical pause here.
We're waiting for screen sharing to be enabled. Know any jokes?
Give it a shot.
There we go.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
Slideshow. There we go. Great. All right. Good evening, everybody. It's good to see you all again. We're happy to be here tonight to share with you our latest MCAS data. And one of the things that we hope to impress upon you tonight is how we are utilizing MCAS data to improve student outcomes. So for tonight's agenda, we'll talk a little bit about what, particularly with MCAS, how different components of MCAS are utilized and reviewed by not only our staff, but by central office to make those adjustments as necessary. We'll talk a little bit about the common assessments that are currently in place in MPS and how they are helping to improve instruction. And then we'll get into the actual components of the MCAS data review. So we'll discuss some of the highlights of the scores. We'll give you some insights on what the data is telling us. We have some theory of actions related to each of the content areas, and then we will talk a little bit about the work that's been occurring this year. All right. So before we review the data this evening, I wanted to briefly share how data from common assessments like MCAS help us improve student outcomes. Common assessments provide a consistent measure of learning across all classrooms and schools. They move us beyond anecdotal feedback to evidence-based insights about teaching and learning. By looking at patterns over time, we can see whether our curriculum instructional moves are leading to better results for students. So these are the major focus areas of the MCAS, and I'll talk a little bit about how each one of those are used to inform curriculum instruction. The first one is obviously the overall achievement trends, where it shows how students are currently performing and how achievement has changed over time. When we talk about student growth percentiles, it tells us how much progress students are making each year and not just their score. This helps us to see whether students are catching up, whether students are keeping up with the pace or accelerating, regardless of their proficiency level. In terms of the domain or strand, for example, domains or strands could be categorized by algebra or geometry, or in ELA, reading comprehension and writing. This helps us pinpoint where we may need stronger curriculum alignment, pacing adjustments, or additional resources. The cohort growth over time tracks the same group of students as they move from grade to grade. This is important because it shows sustained growth through curriculum coherence, dips, and signals where vertical alignment may need strengthening. The achievement gaps identify where specific groups of students are in need, such as our EL learners and our students with IEPs. The item analysis highlights specific questions where students struggle with, and this also helps us identify what parts of processing and thinking that our students might need assistance. So think of in terms like multi-step math or text-based evidence in ELA. So teachers use this to provide more targeted instruction. And then finally, the school level comparisons help us understand the differences in implementation or instructional practices and create opportunities for our schools across the district to learn from each other. So ultimately, the goal is not just to collect data, but it's also to use this data strategically to inform decisions and refine instruction and eventually improve overall outcomes for our students. So this next slide highlights some of our common assessments. And as we think about how data informs our work, these three types of common assessments together create what we call a continuous cycle of improvement. Each provides a different lens into student learning, and when they're used together, they help teachers make informed decisions that lead to better outcomes for students. For example, the MCAS state assessment, it measures student mastery of Massachusetts grade level standards at a point in time. What the MCAS does is it helps us to identify long-term trends and systemic gaps that inform curriculum reviews, as well as standard alignment throughout the district. The STAR Benchmark Universal Screener is one that is used multiple times a year, and this helps us measure growth and proficiency in foundational math and literacy skills throughout the district. Teachers use STAR regularly to adjust grouping in their classroom, pacing, interventions, and to help monitor progress between the MCAS cycles. And then finally, the unit assessments. These are the assessments tied directly to our curriculum units that are in place right now. These measure student understanding of recently taught skills, and this is in real time. Because they're common across classrooms, they provide that real time insight that is really important in terms of progress monitoring. So in closing, these three assessments together give us both short-term insight that teachers use to adjust instruction, and they also give us some long-term data that we can utilize to align curriculum throughout Newton Public Schools.
All right, so we're going to shift to talking about the MCAS data, and Gina and I are going to go back and forth here. I'll talk about the data, and then she'll talk about the theory of action and the work that is happening this year in response to what we see in the MCAS data. But I wanted to start just by talking about student attendance and MCAS performance. So the graph on this slide is looking at the average scaled score on the spring MCAS assessments for ELA and math in grades 3 through 8 and the same ELA and math in grade 10 by the number of absences that students had last school year. So the first sort of grouping on the left-hand side are students who had 0 to 2 absences over the course of the year, all the way over to the right where it's 18 or more absences, and that would be students who are chronically absent by the state's definition. And you can see that as the number of absences increases, the average scaled score decreases for all grade levels and subjects. I wanted to point out that a scaled score of 500 is the cut score for meeting expectations. So you can see for students in grades 3 through 8 in ELA and math, students who had 18 or more absences have an average scaled score below the cut score of 500, so that the average score is either partially or not meeting expectations for that group of students. We also wanted to highlight information about participation on the MCAS in spring 2025. So you may remember that MCAS is no longer a graduation requirement for high school students, and we did see some impact on our participation rates at the high school level. Overall, most of our grades and student groups had participation rates between 97 to 100%, which is pretty typical for us. But grade 10 did have slightly lower participation than they usually do. So overall, grade 10 had participation rates between 97 to 98% when they were typically 98 to 99%. This was not consistent across student groups, however. So students with disabilities had 91% participation in ELA at grade 10 and 89% in math. And students identified as low income by the state had 95% participation in ELA and math. So we did see some variation in who was participating at the 10th grade level. And then civics was administered for the first time as a full administration this spring. Our participation rates for civics, the civics assessment, which is only administered in grade 8, ranged from 92%, and that was for multi-race students, to 100%, and that was for our students who identify as African American or Black and our English learners. I did want to also point out that civics is not part of the state accountability system, so participation rates of 95% or higher, which are what are required in ELA, math, and science, are not required for civics in terms of accountability. And so that potentially could have had an impact on participation there as well. All right, so we're going to shift into looking at the data from the ELA MCAS. The graph on this slide is showing the percentage of students who were meeting or exceeding expectations on the ELA assessment since spring of 2019. So that's our pre-pandemic year, and then the assessments that we have administered since then. The blue bar is the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations in grades 3 through 8, and the red bar is the percentage meeting or exceeding expectations in grade 10. So if you take a look sort of at these bars over time, you can see there was a slight increase in the percentage of students meeting or exceeding in grades 3 through 8 this year, but it's been relatively stable since the pandemic, or it's the pre-pandemic, administration. And in grade 10, we saw a decrease in the percentage of students who were meeting or exceeding expectations from last year. So we decreased from 83% to 77%. When we look at the content on the assessment, writing continues to be the lowest performing category for both grades 3 through 8 and 10 on the ELA assessment. So we've been talking about that since pre-pandemic, or since the pandemic, I guess, since the spring 2021 assessments, that this has been an area that there has been lower scores both statewide and in Newton. Looking at this specifically by grade level, in grades 3 through 8, students on average received 48% of the writing points that were available, which is a decline from last year when the average was 51%. And then in grade 10, we actually did see an increase in writing for those students who took the assessment. On average, they received 68% of the points available compared to 60% last year.
So when we look at the progress of grades 3 through 8, we do see some stable progress in literacy overall. Elementary gains, we can hope that will continue to grow, which will hopefully reflect the early success of EL education curriculum and more consistent instructional practices across the schools. However, we do continue to see variation in performance across grades 6 through 8, which signals the need for more aligned curriculum and coherent middle school ELA curriculum. One thing that we want to highlight this evening is while students are demonstrating growth in reading comprehension and analysis, writing does seem to be an area for growth. And what this tells us is that it confirms to us that curriculum consistency and teacher support matters in these matters. So where we have clear structures and resources in place, we hope to see more improvement. The middle school grade data shows us that coherence between elementary and middle school is essential to sustaining any type of growth, and that the writing data highlights that there is a need for research-based K-8 going all the way into high school approach to writing that includes explicit instruction, feedback, and student engagement. Our theory of action is if students experience a consistent high-quality writing and literacy program supported by skilled teachers and aligned curriculum, then they will become competent, capable communicators who think critically and apply literacy across subjects. Just to give you some highlights in terms of the work that we've been doing, particularly through 3 to 8 literacy this year, all of the elementary teachers this year have already received their first round of explicit writing instruction through EL education, and that has been supervised by Dr. Cloker, who is our new director of ELA. This fall, we administered the very first district-wide common assessment for writing at the elementary schools, and the next step for that is that sometime in the near future, the teachers will get together in teams to collaboratively review and analyze that student data and to inform future instruction. The 6 through 12 ELA Curriculum Review Committee began its self-study this fall and with teachers represented for each grade and its school. And so the plan is to also use that process to create some alignment between the elementary levels. And across elementary schools, we're continuing to utilize professional learning and coaching to ensure that the fidelity of the EL curriculum is in place. So what the data shows us is that we believe that the curriculum and the professional learning that we have been enacting is making a difference. And our next phase is to really dig deeper into writing instruction and strengthen that vertical alignment of this strand from grades elementary all the way through high school. In the 10th grade data, we saw a slight decline in student scores in terms of exceeding expectations, down 4 points, and a rise in students scoring partially meeting expectations. So this shift tells us that more students are close to proficiency, but have not yet demonstrated mastery. On a positive note, student performance in writing has improved, so students earned 68% of available points, up from 60% last year. This improvement suggests that our secondary writing curriculum is getting stronger, even as overall proficiency levels fluctuate. Our next step at the high school level is to ensure alignment and consistency across all secondary classrooms so every student experiences the same level of rigor and support. Our theory of action for the high school ELA portion is if we use the self-study process, which consists of learning walks and curriculum and assessment analysis to identify the strengths, gaps, and redundancies in writing and literacy instruction and create a coherent vertically aligned scope and sequence, then our hope is that students will experience a consistent and high-quality instruction that strengthens their ability to think critically, communicate effectively, and write for real-world purposes. The work that we have done, I just mentioned that we launched the 6 through 12 curriculum review this fall with a district-wide committee that includes teacher representation from every grade and every school. We've conducted learning walks at the secondary level in which we are examining the taught curriculum, trying to determine what instruction looked like in terms of classrooms across the districts. And teachers have also submitted their various curriculum guides to the curriculum review process so that they can be analyzed to get a better view of what the written curriculum looks like. So this is going to, all these pieces are going to be very helpful in terms of identifying the alignment, the overlap, and the gaps in terms of writing and literacy at the secondary level.
So switching to math, the graph on this slide is similar to what we just looked at for ELA. So the blue bars are showing the percentage of students in grades 3 through 8 who were meeting or exceeding expectations on the math MCAS since spring 2019, and the red bars show grade 10. For grades 3 through 8, we saw a slight increase in the percentage of students who are meeting or exceeding expectations compared to last year, but we've seen sort of relative stability in that percentage since spring 2022. And in the 10th grade, we saw relative stability in the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations, with 79% scoring in those categories last year. Looking at the content on the assessment in grades 3 through 8, students had the highest percentage correct on functions, with earning 77% of the points available in that area, and the lowest percentage correct on expressions and equations, with 62% correct in that area. And then on grade 10, algebra and functions had the highest percentage correct with 76%, and statistics and probability had the lowest percentage correct at 65%.
So as Katie highlighted, after 3 years of relatively stable results, we're starting to see a slight upward trend in math performance across grades 3 to 8. This suggests that the early impact of some of the curriculum alignment work that we've done is garnering some success, but there is so much more work for us to do in this area. The domain analysis reveals that functions is the strongest, at 77 correct, reflecting students' solid conceptual understanding of relationships between quantities. Expressions and equations remains lowest at 62% correct, showing that algebraic reasoning and fluency continue to be challenging for many of our students. These findings emphasize the need for earlier, consistent exposure to algebraic thinking so students may enter higher level math with confidence and readiness. By offering Algebra 1 in 8th grade, we will be helping students build the foundational skills and conceptual understanding needed for advanced coursework in high school. Our theory of action for many of the content areas and throughout the presentations focus on the need for curriculum that is aligned and for assessment data that can be utilized to improve instruction. But just to give you some highlights of some of the work that we've been doing this year in math, as you know, we're piloting new math curriculum across the district as part of the pre-K to 12 curriculum adoption process. We have rolled out our new math pathways, which is designed to help provide intervention, support, and enrichment opportunities for all learners. We're utilizing our MTS framework, which schools are intervening with students below benchmark using consistent materials as well as progress monitoring tools. And finally, our elementary math specialists are being trained to track student growth through EduClimber. So all of those pieces put together, we hope to see even more increased gains in the next few years. The next slide here. In grade 10, math results show minimal variability across domains, which means student performance is relatively consistent across the content areas. Algebra and functions continue to be the strongest area, with students earning 76%, demonstrating solid conceptual understanding and application for algebraic relationships. Statistics and probability remain the lowest domain at 65%, highlighting a need to continue to strengthen student data analysis and interpretation skills at the high school level. Overall, students show strong conceptual reasoning in algebra and geometry, but would benefit from more consistent and earlier exposure to data and statistical thinking. And that's some of the things that we are talking about in terms of aligning our curriculum and doing some revisions to our curriculum this year. Data literacy and statistical reasoning are areas that need more intentional integration throughout the secondary math curriculum. And related to this data, we're finding that more and more of careers are demanding the need for data research and analysis. And so this is something that we're trying to build within our curriculum to reflect what our students will be facing once they hit the workforce. So in terms of the high school and some of the work that we're doing this year, again, we are piloting new curriculum. We've been having conversations about how we can integrate more data analysis, interpretation, as well as procedural mastery in terms of math instruction. The new math pathways, as I mentioned before, much like at the elementary, are designed to create more structured interventions and support, as well as enrichment for all learners. A review of the integrated math sequence is underway with the goal of increasing student exposure to data, statistics, and probability, especially in grades 9 and 10. And we are also aligning the Math 2 to Math 1 course that will soon be taught in grade 8 to ensure smooth progressions of skills and concepts. And lastly, we are identifying and exploring new high school math electives that will expand opportunities for applied mathematics as well as real-world problem solving.
All right, we're going to shift to science or STE, science, technology, and engineering. Again, this graph is looking at the percentage of students who scored meeting or exceeding expectations since spring of 2019. The green bar shows the percentage scoring in those categories on the 5th grade science assessment. Purple is grade 8, and then blue is the high school introductory physics assessment, because the majority of our students take the physics assessment in Newton in grade 9. We saw growth in both grades, the percentage of students scoring exceeding meeting or exceeding expectations in both grades 5 and 8 this year. So grade 5, we had 70% of students meeting or exceeding expectations, up from 65% in the prior year. And we had seen that sort of stable over since spring of 21. And in grade 8, we had 69% of students scoring in those categories, up from 64% in the prior year. And then in terms of high school physics, we saw a decline in the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations from last year. Again, this test is no longer required for graduation at the high school level. Looking at the content of the assessments in grade 5, technology and engineering was the strongest category for our 5th graders, where they earned 73% of the points available in that category. And physical science had the lowest percentage correct, with students earning 62% of the points there. In grade 8, physical science was the strongest category, with students earning 73% of the available points, and life science had the lowest percentage correct, with students earning 61% of the points there. And in physics, all 3 standards had similar performance, around 67 to 71% correct.
So just to highlight the data that Katie just presented, we are seeing steady growth overall in grades 3 through 8 through STE. I think it's important to highlight that grade 5 scores are up 7 points from pre-pandemic levels, which was a significant improvement that reflects strong teaching and curriculum implementation. Grade 8 performance has returned to pre-pandemic levels, showing recovery and stability after several years of disruption. And by domain, technology and engineering continues to be a strength, students demonstrating growth in application and problem-solving skills. And I just also want to highlight that we are also this year embarking on a self-study in technology and engineering as well. So hopefully we'll be able to strengthen that area even more so. Life science, however, remains an area for targeted improvement, signaling the need for deeper conceptual understanding and instructional focus in this strand. I think what this data is telling us is that there is an upward trend in performance that shows that our science curriculum work that we've been doing over the past several years, particularly where we implemented Open SciEd, is paying off. We're seeing some good dividends from that. The data also affirms that some of the new approaches that we're taking in science, hands-on inquiry-based learning, is also building stronger student support and, of course, increasing outcomes. The continued need for improvement in life science highlights the importance of ensuring consistent access to high-quality instructional materials and pacing across the districts. It is our belief if we provide hands-on investigation, sense-making, and real-world applications in science, that our students will develop the curiosity, critical thinking, and the ability to apply scientific and engineering practices to solving real-world problems. The work that we've done in the elementary level this year in terms of science is, as you know, we've implemented a new Open SciEd aligned curriculum in grades K to 12 that was approved last spring by the school committee, building a strong foundation in scientific inquiry and discourse. There's planning underway to adopt Open SciEd for grades 3 to 5, so continuing that approach throughout the elementaries. The Open SciEd rollout continues in grades 6 through 8 with ongoing professional development and support for teachers. The district is also evaluating the 6 through 8 curriculum sequence. Last year, one of the 2 grade 8 life science units was newly introduced and taught after MCAS, which helps explain some of the domain variations that we see in the data. Once fully implemented, Newton will have a K to 8 aligned STEM curriculum, providing a coherent progression that lays the foundation for success in the high school science courses. In terms at the high school, we're seeing some strong and stable stability with 75% of students meeting or exceeding expectations. While there's been a slight dip from last year, overall outcomes continue to reflect a solid foundation in scientific reasoning and conceptual understanding. This stability suggests that core science instruction and lab-based experiences are strong, though continued focus on applications and sense-making will help sustain and build upon these results. Students are just demonstrating proficiency in content knowledge, but we also need to make sure that scientific practices, modeling, reasoning, data analysis, these are all emphasized consistently across all courses. One of the things that we're working on this year is a cross-district focus on strengthening the science and engineering practices supported by targeted professional development throughout the district. The teachers right now are creating performance tasks that emphasize modeling, reason, and explanation, allowing students to demonstrate their understanding beyond multiple choice types of assessments. The district is also developing common assessments for scientific practices in grade 9 and 11 using Pivot Interactives, which is an interactive simulation-based tool that helps teachers access how students apply scientific concepts to real-world problems. And I want to emphasize this was a teacher-driven initiative that was brought to us by the teachers there at request to pilot these materials. So in closing, I think our continued focus on science and engineering ensures that our students just aren't learning the science content, but they're actually utilizing those scientific practices to think and work like scientists.
Okay, last subject is the civics. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this was the first year of the full administration. So we don't have any trend data for the civics assessment right now. This was administered only in grade 8, and 72% of our 8th graders who took this assessment scored in the meeting or exceeding expectations category. We had similar performance across all 3 categories that were assessed on this assessment. Around 72% for each one. And those are government structures, foundations of government, and rights and responsibilities. And our students in 8th grade outperformed the state average on every item on the civics assessment.
So just to highlight some of the key points, I want to also point out that in fact, our students scored 6 to 27 points higher than the state average on every released question. Just demonstrates a depth and breadth and understanding of civic understanding. Nearly 3/4 of our students demonstrated proficiency or advanced understanding of civic standards, a clear reflection of our commitment to social studies instruction that fosters civic reasoning and engagement. Some of the work that's happened this year in terms of social studies education is that we have undergone our 6 through 12 social studies curriculum review. So we launched our self-study this fall. We brought together 17 teachers representing every grade and every school throughout the district. The committee's goal is really to create a stronger vertical alignment and expand instructional practices that promote that critical thinking and student engagement related to civics. 8th grade teachers right now are analyzing the civics MCAS data during grade level department meetings. They're reviewing that information, the released items, as well as the student responses to identify any patterns or areas for growth in terms of the 8th grade civics assessments. And they are also designing common assessments that emphasize literacy integration and civic reasoning skills, ensuring that classroom tasks mirror the rigor and relevance of the MCAS.
All right, so overall, we had a few key takeaways to share based on everything we've just talked about. So in general, overall performance on the MCAS is steady or improving across subjects. The variation that we see across grade levels signals the need for stronger curriculum alignment. We believe this will help close achievement gaps, which we did not discuss in our presentation, but they are included. And there's a lot of graphs included in the report if you'd like to take a look at that. Additionally, the use of common assessments in our schools will help ensure consistent expectations for students and help us track progress. Implementing MTSS across all levels, utilizing the data from the common assessments can help drive improvement for our students. And then finally, continued alignment and teacher professional development are key to accelerating student growth.
At this point, if there's any questions, we'd love to take those on.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. Why don't we open up to members for questions? Alicia, Victor, Rajiv, Anping, Emily.
So, I was looking at one of the charts in the report. These are all questions. have to do with the report. I'll try not to cough my face off. Third grade is like over 10% lower than they were pre-pandemic. But these are not COVID learning loss kids, right? These children were not, they were in pre-K during COVID. So presumably in a preschool program for many of them, and presumably doing maybe some early literacy, but not in our kindergarten formal literacy programs. So shouldn't we be seeing a rebound? Like shouldn't those numbers be much closer to pre-pandemic? And do you have any thoughts on why they wouldn't be?
The one thing I will say is that the implementation of EL education is still new, and our teachers are still trying to develop those patterns of instructional delivery. So I think that once our teachers get more consistent and we get more consistent with the implementation of those routines and practices, I do think we'll start to see that on an upward tick.
So it might be a new curriculum thing, because I know in our
I do also just want to say that only 50% of the EL curriculum was covered in the last 2 years. So we did reintroduce the pacing guide this year too. So that's 50% of the full year's 4 units. So there's a pacing issue at hand. And part of that's, they give you this many lessons to teach something, and teachers need to get through it a couple of times to know how to curate that and to use their own judgment about which experiences work best. So we are in that process now. This is the first year there's a guide and selected common assessments around which to drive that process.
some of our common assessments actually had good indicators for the new curriculum not showing a dip. You had said something about
Our STAR data did not show a dip last year, but in third grade only. That's the only, so that we didn't have K1, 2 implementing. So now we do. So we'll be able to track it for sure.
Okay.
And I just want to mention too, that this year we are asking teachers to implement all the modules as is. Last year, it's still kind of new. We were trying to, get their groove in terms of the implementation piece, but this is the first year we've asked folks to do it with fidelity.
Okay. And then student growth, there's some graphs about student growth percentiles increasing with performance, which is counterintuitive to me. Normally you would see children who are lower performers, if you want to call it that, hopefully with higher growth, because we're targeting those kids for higher growth. So can you tell me why those graphs seem reversed?
It
weird,
is
right?
our students who are scoring at higher performance levels have higher, on average, higher SGPs.
Is that an indicator that we need to do a better job targeting the folks that don't?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then the stability of the English learner cohort, is that a stable group, or do we have a lot of move in, move out? I found over time, I didn't know if I could really feel good about that. Is that even the same group?
It's not. So we see the most variation in the performance of our English learners because as students become proficient in English, they move out of that group and they become a former English learner. So if you're looking at those graphs, they go into that other group of former English learners. We have had wide variation in the incoming ELD or English language development scores of our EL students over time. So some years we have students who are at a slightly higher ELD level, meaning they have more English proficiency. And then some years we have a lot of students at a very low ELD level. So there's a lot of variation in movement in and out of that group and variation in English proficiency of that group as well.
And I also just want to mention that that department specifically is doing a lot of curriculum work this year in terms of alignment throughout the district from elementary to high school. They're also doing a lot of professional development across the district in terms of our English language students.
And then final question, the EL population change since 2019, I assume it has increased. Do you know by how much? Or?
Well, I will be back in January and I will have a whole report that includes that. It actually has fluctuated though. So I can't off the top of my head, I can't remember, but we did have a decline and then we actually saw quite an increase last year or the year before. And I think now we're more stable. It's around 750 students.
Be interested in how it compares to 2019.
Yeah.
The population has grown a lot and then those folks struggle a lot with these tests.
And you can see it is in the enrollment analysis report from last year. We have a history since 1990 of the population of the English learner student group. So you can look at the change in the size as well as change in native language.
One data request for next year would be to look at the comparison subgroups. So we showed subgroups compared to like state and district, but I would like to see I think in terms of understanding how we're performing with our subgroups, how they compare to the subgroups at the state level or the subgroups in another district. Is
That
in our thing?
should be in here.
Subgroup to state, not subgroup to subgroup state.
So if you look at pages, yes, but if you take a look at pages, or starting on page 64, we have comparison, it's the comparison districts by student group and subject. So you can take, it shows like the comparison districts that we include in the report is showing the percentage of students by race, ethnicity who are meeting or exceeding, and by other student groups. So English learners, students with disabilities. Okay.
All set. Okay, thank you. Victor?
First of all, thank you very much. I know it takes a lot of work to produce these reports, so I appreciate it. No gotchas, just trying to understand slower. If we, I don't know if we can navigate to slide 7. There's the one on the EOA MCAS
This one?
meeting exceeds one. Yes, I think it's, yes, exactly. So one thing, just want to check my understanding here. The writing declined from 51 to 48, but net, we went up from 64 to 66 from the spring. Is that because we're offsetting it through reading and language presumptively, or?
Yeah, so the writing is just a portion of the scores. So
For the net effect to be growing, I'm just interpreting that as there was improvement, therefore, in reading and language, or is that?
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Something to highlight then. That's good. That's a success. Yeah, that's indeed. What I'm also trying to understand is I heard the argument about EL education still being implemented. When I think about the math side, I did notice that there were some gains that were happening, but we're still very much even earlier, I would say, in the math implementation. Any thoughts about why there might be a difference in that?
We have
behavior?
not started math implementation at all. So there's no new curriculum yet at all.
Okay. So I guess then the question I'm trying to figure out is how much of, I'm not trying to take anything away from the bump that we see of 2 percentile points, but my inclination is almost to say like it's more of a stagnant performance with some degree of just natural variation that's occurring. Is that a
Stable.
fair sense?
Mhm.
Okay. All right, very good. And then my last question is around, love the idea with self-studies and learning walks. Not to get ahead of myself, if that were not to be as robust in effect as we would like, what would be the next step?
Excuse me, what would not be robust?
If the learning walks and the other self-study kind of processes were insufficient to get to where we want to go, what's plan B?
So it's part of a 5-year curriculum cycle review. So it's just step 1 of 5 different aspects, which then includes the staff analyzing what their own data is, this data analysis. So this comes from the staff, not from these 2 heads right here alone. And then the pilot of curriculum, and then squaring it against any current curriculum that might exist. So there's a whole 5-year process.
Yep.
Mhm.
One thing, what I guess I'm trying to get ahead of is understanding there is that cycle that's in play. Is there a potential future risk of investment either in terms of PD or whatever the case might be if that initial step is not sufficient? I guess what are the risks of having to basically invest even more in terms of complementary PD? And if that doesn't make sense, then
So we're looking to identify what are the gaps we need to fill with the curriculum cycle that is occurring. So you'll be informed every step of the way, but so will our staff, who will also drive what are the solutions. Any formal curriculum adoption comes before you with the whys, so you can vet that out as well. But we won't bring you anything that hasn't been vetted by our teachers, our administrators, and seeks to solve the problems that you're seeing here.
understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rajiv?
So luckily start off with, this MCAS was administered after it was no longer a graduation requirement, correct? So are we seeing any shift in how seriously students are taking it?
Really good question. I think that's more a question for the high school principals. Probably
Well,
speak about that.
anecdotally, Rajiv, the principal said that students worked as long and hard as they ever did. And Katie is our MCAS coordinator, and there were still people asking for the full extended time. We didn't see a lot of knucklehead behavior or, filling in random dots and those types of things. We did not see that. We saw students really invested. We did see more parents pull kids from assessments, which we reported to you earlier, resulted in some schools being cited for that. So
Right.
that was really the big change we saw, that parents just felt like you can be out this day, it doesn't matter.
Got it. Right. I was wondering about that, and then how much how much of a focus we would have on MCAS results and how they drive the direction the school district is going in future years. Because I could see over time the level of focus drifting downward. So
I mean, I will add that at the high school level, your scores still can count for a scholarship. So there is, I mean, for students who might be interested in that scholarship, there's still some motivating or a motivating factor for that, for the scholarship purpose. And, we've seen in grades 3 through 8, students typically, it's not a graduation requirement. And we've seen, focus and most students participating in general. I mean, that could potentially shift with a change in the graduation requirement, but I don't know if you want to add more to
I
that.
was just going to say that I think that's why it's important to have multiple types of assessment to utilize to make those kind of decisions. So for example, we have the STAR assessment. We've been having a lot of conversations, particularly in math, about what other types of assessment that might actually assess mathematical practices and not just necessarily the standards. So I think that, we're seeing a movement in which we're looking at multiple data points and different assessments to assess different components of the areas that we're looking to improve.
thank you. And then final question. Most of the action steps are focused on having more standardized and consistent curricula across the district, across classrooms. Isn't there anything else that we should be doing? So for example, if you look at our subgroups, or you compare our subgroups to other school districts, there seem to be opportunities certainly to have a greater focus on supporting certain subgroups. I don't know that that's necessarily down to a gap in curriculum or an inconsistency in curriculum, but it seems like pretty much what we're talking about here is, we're going to have a level of consistency across the school district, and that is going to potentially lift up all students, or potentially not. But I feel like we have a gap here in terms of action steps where curriculum is not the answer to everything.
The one thing I will explain in terms of when we design curriculum, it on the surface, it might seem like we're just covering content and skills, but there's a lot more to building curriculum than just that. So when we build curriculum, we're also taking into account what are differentiation instructional strategies that we can use to amplify those students who might need that extra support. We look at culturally responsive instruction. We look at best practices in terms of research-based. So it's not just in professional learning. So a lot of the curriculum documents and the work that we're doing is also outlining a plan for teacher learning. So we look at the whole, while the guide is that alignment piece, it entails so much more than that. So I think that we get to all of those different pieces when we do the actual alignment of our curriculum in itself.
Got it. So for instance, part of the professional development when implementing curriculum, coming back to a previous question, might be related to how do you deliver this curriculum to English language learners?
Correct.
And do it more effectively and so on. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a big part of the plan.
Great.
I
Thank
would
you.
say we have a major struggle here because first, this committee challenged us. We couldn't measure how are we doing on the day-to-day, right? MCAS was just a once a year capture, which isn't sufficient. I mean, we think, teacher curated assessments that they agree are also important, are probably the missing piece to what this is, because we do trust our teachers and we do know we want to see what they're measuring. The other part is we don't have reliable MTSS intervention systems for non-special education students, which affect all of these subgroups. So we've just built that system K-5, but we do not have any intervention for general education students outside of the gen ed teacher teaching their lesson. And right now we have special educators and EL educators trying to, let's say in the average middle school, adapt to 50 different classrooms with no common resources or expected curriculum. So even if those educators were the secret sauce by themselves, they can't, they have to adapt to so many different classrooms without the cohesion. Now there's some cohesion, but there's not so that combination to me is the two-step that we don't have right now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rajiv. Let's go to Ping.
Thank you. Well, talking about MCAS data, it's always interesting, but also challenging topic. And first of all, I'd like to say again, congratulations to Katie and your team. It's tremendous work. And I'm not saying this in a kind of just as complimentary in casual one. I'm serious. Running data and trying to present data in a meaningful way takes so much efforts and resources. So it's wonderful work. And unfortunately, probably will not get a lot of good comments from people because they're looking for something they want to see. If they did not see it, they don't care what kind of data you presented. And also I'd like to see, Gina, that you share the using data to improve outcomes. Now that's the key here. First we did not have data. We complain about lack of data. Now we have data, but how to use data, it's also very challenging part. And sometimes people, again, looking for some easy data, me included, to see whether we are doing better than our comparable districts. And but here had many aspects of the data. And mostly individual person probably will not even pay attention to that. How to improve the achievement, talking about the trends and growth scores, which is a little bit challenging to some people. And domain analysis, most people will not care about domain analysis unless you are involved in the district, school level instruction and leadership. So again, I think this is improvement from past years and make the data more meaningful. It just takes time to understand. And you try to explain, the data and then, what happens and then, what we can do and what you have done. So all these things as background information to understand data. It's all wonderful. I just want to make sure that folks understand that, and I do not want to miss this important part. It really takes time. And do we have time, by the way, Chris, to talk about more things about data, or this not for today, probably for next week, or because there are a lot of, they were in the details.
There's a lot of details in there.
Yeah, that's so much details. And you cannot talk just quickly because that makes no sense, probably wasting people time. But
why don't we save the very, very detailed questions for a follow-up via email with Dr. Nolan, staff, and the committee?
Okay. And let me just mention two things. Probably we can talk more. One thing is, compare the data within our own district historically is meaningful, but sometimes it's misleading. And the tricky part is MCAS tests are not in that consistent for past 5-10 years. And I happen to know something, sometimes statewide data ideally should be consistent with hundreds of thousands of students statewide. Normally, like SAT score should be consistent, the average medium score, but unfortunately for MCAS tests, they change the test items frequently and then some other issues. So for example, just look at the ELA MCAS test. And if for some people who are not well informed, look at spring 2024, the grade 10, 83% of students got meeting expectation and exceeding expectation. And look at spring 2025. It dropped to 77, 6% drop. In the ideal world, if it's always consistent, people were asking questions. That's meaningful, significant drop. How could that happen? Because past few years, 86, that's spring 21, just before the COVID hit hard, and then dropped to 80%, 81, 83. You see gradually increasing. Now suddenly dropped to 77. And I checked the statewide data. Statewide data also dropped 6%, if I recall correctly. That means Newton did not do a worse job than averagely speaking. So there could be other reasons, like the test items getting a little bit more difficult, or scoring methods change a little bit, which impact on the percentage. So I'm saying here is if we include statewide average data for comparison, people see, oh, statewide data also dropped 6%, then would not be so alarming. Otherwise, because that caught my attention right away here, from 83, 24 to 85, or to 77 to 25. That's largest percentage drop for past 5 years, what happened. So that's just one example. So that's why I'm saying sometime some comparative data will be useful. When we look at the this detailed comparison with our so-called comparable district or whatever the other term we can use, then we can see if we drop 5%, but other districts still remain same, then we can ask meaningful question, why we drop. If we saw all the district drop 3% or 5%, okay, that means something different happening, not because our district not doing good job. So that's just my general observation. I think I made this observation before. I think, Katie, if you remember, I said probably if we could include some kind of statewide data, that will help us to understand whether these comparisons more meaningful. Because if we only compare to ourselves, sometimes it's not that accurate.
So I want you to feel heard on Ping because the end of this document has from page 52 to 72 has exactly that. All the things that you asked us last year at this time, I made a note, here it is, so that you can see the very things that you asked for.
I did remember when I read the data, including state, I was happy.
Good.
But when most people look at this presentation,
Oh, I see what you mean.
you see, they will not go to this detail. And I doubt people got this copy, how many percentage people will go through to the very last of these documents. I'll be so impressed if someone read carefully.
Do you hear that? Everyone on Ping is challenging you to read the document.
Well, I'm serious. This is like a legal document. People just give up in the middle way, say, that's it. I'm not going to deal with that. Okay. I think I said enough. And thank you all again for wonderful work. And I'm so happy, we are making progress and make the data more meaningful. And that's what we are looking for. Thanks.
Okay, thanks on Ping. Paul?
I can't believe it's first. Go for it.
I also echo the thanks. I know that this is a heavy lift and there's a lot of data. And I appreciate all the things that you do for the district just in general and for this topic in particular. So one of the things that was said repeatedly was professional development, which I know is the answer to many things. But my fear is that it's a lot of professional development, and I am concerned about the load on teachers and when in the schedule. And I know we have a very, very tight, very, very tight schedule of when we can and cannot do professional development because there's teaching that has to happen somewhere in there. And so my question is, these interventions and the implementations, as well as the accompanying professional development, is this all for this year? And I won't be here, but others will. We'll get another report in a year from now with all that professional development having been implemented. Is that the ideal? How are we dealing with that?
I mean, this is a many-year plan, so, I mean, Gina
I
can
was
tell
just
you.
going to say that when we devise the curriculum review process, you'll notice that one of the years is focusing on professional learning, and it's staggered depending on where you are with the curriculum review cycle. So that's one piece. And we're very mindful, particularly at the elementary level, because they teach all subjects. So I want to stress that we take all of that into account. But we're also doing, I think, a much better job in utilizing the time that we do have for professional learning. So like grade level department meetings, early release days. Thrive is another example where we're utilizing the time for professional learning. We also offer stipends for summer professional learning. So I think that we're getting better at like phasing things out and kind of, spreading the time for professional learning, but also utilizing the time that we have.
So, gosh, that's like the third time I've done that tonight. What is wrong with me?
Drop the mic.
Yeah, I know, drop the mic. So yes, and I greatly appreciate that. I think also I just want to elevate some of the staff feelings of there being too much change too quickly all at once. And so that's why I asked about professional development, because we have to have the PD in order for this to be successful. And I'm just a little concerned about where we are in terms of pace. So thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Emily. I just want to start by saying facetiously about the civics results, where you compared them to the state results, that there's no virtue in benchmarking yourself to a substandard norm. Okay, and particularly in the area of civics, I would really hope that our students would do better than the state average. So it's nice to see. A general comment I think that we should keep in mind, or you and our new members out there, is there's a danger in thinking that these numbers give the impression of precision that actually isn't there, is my point. And that while, in my opinion, while MCAS is useful for a number of statewide purposes under state statute and so on, the main value to us is what they tell you directionally, not what they tell you specifically in most cases. And so I just offer that as a personal opinion. You know, Gina, when you came in with your entry plan, which was several months after Anna came in with her entry plan, you actually went through a really deep discussion with us, and this gets to your point, Rajiv, about what curriculum is and how you develop it and how you institute it, and the multifaceted parts of that, which include a number of the things we've talked about here. And I, for one, think you're totally on target with that. I look at the last slide, the MCAS key takeaways, and you could take off the heading of that last slide and say, that's what we're doing here. And while MCAS might give us some information that's helpful in that process, it seems to me, and I'm asking you for your response to this, what's actually going on the ground is to a certain extent not related to MCAS at all. It's related to a vision of curriculum improvement, professional development, and the like that I think we all asked for, that you promised you would deliver, that we knew would be multi-year. And bravo to you for doing that. Emily, I think I'm on the other side of you with regard to pacing, but I'm not out there doing it. But I'm hearing from parents who want this sooner rather than later. And we absolutely have to be responsive to the many demands we put on the faculty. But my impression, talking to many faculty members, is that they welcome this. That what's going on here in terms of a greater standardization of curriculum and pedagogy and the needs for professional development is reinforcing why they got into the profession in the first place. That they want to be as good as the community would like them to be. So I'm not seeing the pushback so much from the rank and file. I'm hearing it in other documents that I read, but not from individual instructors that I meet in elementary, middle, and high school. But frankly, that's a judgment call that the superintendent and her folks have to make, along with our colleagues in the faculty. But I just want to say, overall, I'm very pleased with what you're doing, irrespective of MCAS. And to the extent that MCAS results help give further ammunition to the direction you were going to take anyway, great. That was more of a speech than a question. I understand, but we're getting near the end of our term, so. But Gina, I mean, is there something that you're really doing different on the ground based on these MCAS results?
I really believe in the curriculum review process, and it's not something that I invented. It's research-based. It's done throughout the country, throughout the entire globe. The work is really hard. I acknowledge that. But I want to say very clearly that, you know, this is, even though it's being facilitated by the Office of Teaching and Learning, we talk to teachers every single day. Every time we roll something out, we seek their feedback and we make those course corrections or adjustments as needed, because we want it to be successful for them and we want to have that impact on our students. The work is urgent. And I want to stress that as well. I mean, like, we do not have aligned curriculum or common assessments in place. And those are a key component of change and improving student outcomes. And without that, we're just like in the dark. So I just want to emphasize that the work is hard. We're providing teachers the support that they need. We hear them when they tell us, you know, that something needs to be course corrected. For the most part, we make those adjustments. We want to be partners in this work with them, and we're going to do everything we can to give them that support. But to your point, you know, if we follow the tenets of curriculum review and curriculum development, we will get to the places that I think we all want to be at. And that is that the data that we're producing is going to give us the information that we need to make those adjustments. One example of that is from the MCAS, and not just from MCAS, just from the other assessments that we're seeing, is we needed to do a better job with data and statistical analysis with our students. And if you listen to NPR or any other, you know, public report, that is an area where most employers are saying that's what we want to see in students. And so we hear that. And so we go back to our teachers and we say, okay, let's look at our curriculum. Where is that showing up or where is that not showing up? And if it's not, let's talk about how we can improve that. So it's a conversation. It's not just based on MCAS, it's based on a lot of factors, but I really believe it's important work. And, you know, I think that we're off to a really good start. And I recognize that it's hard, but that's why we created the curriculum review cycle, to spread out the work so that it's not all happening at the same time. I also want to emphasize that in the curriculum review cycle, there are different teams of people doing different things. So not every teacher is piloting new curriculum material, just some, right? And we've encouraged that be done on a volunteer basis with our colleagues. And, you know, we will continue to work in that capacity. We don't want to be a burden. We want to help our teachers take that work off of them. I mean, I go throughout the district and I hear teachers talking about, new teachers saying to both Dr. Nolan at one of our learning walks, thank you so much for these curriculum guides. I'm new here. I can't imagine what I would have done if I didn't have at least a foundational guide to help me get started, so that I can concentrate on those important things, which are differentiation and student relationships and all those other pieces that make a classroom so important. So I think for the most part, people are appreciating the work and are excited about the work, but I just also want to acknowledge that it is difficult.
If I could just add on to that, I mean, this is a change management moment for the district too. And I just want to say, you know, teachers have shouldered the load by themselves in siloed parts. And if I had been here 12 years shouldering it by myself and making it happen, I would need the central office to convince me why I need to make a change too. And that is where we are, right? So you're hearing an MCAS report and data presented so that we can talk about the why. I can't live with 30% of third graders not being on grade level. That is persistent up through grade 10. So I feel deep urgency. I treat it like if my kid was in 8th grade in this district, what would I want to have happen? So, I mean, that's the heart of it for us, is that we need to close those gaps. And there's been some persistent gaps and some that have widened since the pandemic, and we're not unique in that situation. We can't expect teachers to pull new rabbits out of a hat unless we give them training time and support. So I do hear voices across the system saying, please don't, move this thing I love and I built this over 12 or 15 years. Please, I totally understand that. I got into this business because I love that work too. So we are trying to toggle that with this need for change and to close those gaps because kids can't wait. They only have a certain number of years with us. And if 5 years is the curriculum review cycle and we don't, does that mean we aren't going to have the kinds of materials and resources in an entire student lifetime with us? I don't think anybody wants that. So, but there's a balance between it, and that's the interactive dialogue between teachers and administrators.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Fuller?
Huge thank you to both educators for leading us on this really important journey. It's important and critical work. And Katie, you're amazing. I'm looking at the MCAS key takeaways, and I would say all of those are correct. But I'm following up a little bit on what our superintendent just said and a little bit what Ping just said. It's too incomplete for such an important night, which is, as the superintendent just said, the percent of kids, of our children, of our students who are not exceeding or meeting expectations is just way too high. In too many subjects, the change from 2019 to 2025 is still too dramatic. And I know the data is in the long report, but if you look at our students who are low income, our students with disabilities, our English language learners, our students who are boys, our students who are Black, and also to a lesser degree, but also Hispanic, Latinx, the gaps are way too big. Those have to be some of the key takeaways. And I know you know this. I just think it's got to be on this summary sheet because you are being led by a superintendent, and I know your teachers care about it as much as our assistant superintendents, but we can't bury the headline, and it feels like some of the headline got buried here. So thank you. I'm just, again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, or the choir has preached to me, so I've learned it, whatever, but I think it's important to say it again tonight.
There's a lot of great work that's happening on all those fronts right now. If I had more time and another night, we could go through it. I'm really proud in terms of the conversations we are having with our subgroups. For many people, it's the first time we are having these deep conversations. So the work is happening, but to your point, it should be part of the key takeaway. So thank you.
Thank you. I do just want to remind everyone that in this school improvement plans that you saw earlier this fall, each of those subgroup goals were set and required to be set across elementary schools according to their particular data. And middle schools set instructional data largely snuggled around writing instruction based on this data. So perhaps we should have led with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Tamika?
So I'm going to pick up on what the mayor was talking about, and you said it beautifully. I applaud you for putting that out there in such blunt statement. And Rajiv, picking up a little bit about on the point that you started to touch on, which was curriculum review cycles, what more? That's my quick notes for what you were saying. I think on its face, we understand that the MCAS data, the STAR data, the unit assessments, that they all capture different pieces of the puzzle. but I'm wondering when it is that we're going to start thinking of them as one complete picture. And rather than having a presentation on MCAS, focused solely on MCAS, how do we bring in and have that fuller picture for student performance, incorporating the tools that we now have? I didn't see anywhere in here the iReady data that we have. And I know that's also woven in this. I know you have it, and that it's in the toolbox of things that you look at to get that full picture, but it's not visible here. In the overview I'm talking about of all the different assessments. So that was the one point, which leads to the question of going forward, is it still valuable to have the standalone MCAS focused without importing in all of those other assessment points? And is that still valuable, or should we think about shifting and incorporating and looking at them contemporaneously?
So we won't be doing a standalone MCAS presentation in the future because we built you a dashboard that has all the metrics that we said we were going to do as a system. We abandoned iReady, if you recall, and we abandoned it last year. And so STAR reading and math assessments, of which we do not have 3 years of implementation K-9, to bring that to you before we got all that out of our system and figured it out and had teachers who could speak to it. So we are close upon that with K-8, but 9 is brand new this year, those assessments. So it is our intention as we build the data ecosystem that you asked us to build, that is the last page of the strategic plan. So common assessments are one. That is a 5th year deliverable that you'll get out of the strategic plan. The college career life ready metric, which we are developing right now, which has the portrait of a learner, it has assessments on social emotional learning, financial literacy, media literacy, and research skills. That's in development now because we have 0 curriculum articulated for those areas, but the stakeholders across the system asked us to bring those into their children's lives, so we are. So we're really close to that. Sort of, we do a mid-year and an end-of-the-year state of the schools. We would like to then bring that to you with all of its glory and all of the parts. We just we can't do that right the first time we give an assessment in a district. We also have new reading assessments. We have new mini assessments, formative assessments in reading instruction and phonics, and we have new common assessments that come with the new curriculum. So it's a lot of new.
Yes, I grant you that. I guess my overall point is, as we have data, even if we're shifting where it's, how it looks or how it's being collected, we should think of it as one complete picture and stop just looking at this rather specific one flashpoint in time, which you acknowledge in your report, point of data with the MCAS. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was it's a personal pet peeve of mine, the multi-race designation. And Katie, I've spoken about this over the years, where multi-race, it sort of artificially either inflates or deflates some of those other subgroup categories, right? Because you're not understanding what is the multi-race as it relates. Is it that a student, like my own children, they're multi-race, but the world is going to see them and view them as Black. And so shouldn't we understand in those multi-race subgroups, are we talking about, there's also ELL students in there. There's also students with disabilities in there. There are students who are, non-Hispanic multi-race, but you understand my point. And so how do we get to a place where we can capture that more accurately?
Yeah, I don't have a great answer for that right now. We have a wide variety of I'm trying to think how to say this. Students who are included in the multi-race group in the report have widely varied racial backgrounds that they have self-identified to the district, right? Because that's where we're getting that data. By when students register, they select their race and ethnicity, and then that's how those categories get created. So there are many different students incorporated in that group, which I think is the point you're trying to make here. And so it's always this issue of like, how much aggregation do you do versus disaggregation? And when you start to disaggregate more, you have fewer students in certain groups, and it makes it harder to look at trends. So we can certainly break out the multi-race student group into more discrete categories in terms of which races they've selected. But then you start to, it'll be a very long graph, right? Like there's a lot. So I guess I'm saying I don't have a great answer because it's hard to, we utilize that group because that is what the state uses, right? Like that's how they report out on students who select more than one race. And so we follow that, but we certainly can break it out in more detail if that's desired.
Just question whether as a category, the value of it, because it masks a lot. You don't understand this group of students, right? What composition, particular subgroup composition that is. So the fact that it's its own category, it's odd. And that's something we can talk about more another time. And then following up on what the mayor was saying more directly, the plans of action. I love the approach to how we took the MCAS data in this specific case. We said, what do we know and what are we going to do about it? These are the words the superintendent started with. But we don't have a plan of action specific to what we know, which is that 30% of our students, many of them who happen to be African-American, Black, Hispanic, Latinx, English learners, or students with disabilities or low income. Those are the students in that particular bucket. We know there's a gap. What is the plan of action specific to this category? And hold on. So I would love to see us get to a place, and I understand it might be visible and, over there in that report or in this area here. I want to see a specific plan of action for addressing this issue. I've been a school committee member now 6 years. Every year I've said the same thing when this presentation rolled around, which is the single greatest predictor of student achievement in this district. And it's not just this district, so I'm acknowledging that, is whether a student falls into one of these categories. And that shouldn't be the case. I know you acknowledge that, and the superintendent certainly does as well. I guess we see the problem, what are we going to do about it? That for me was missing from this very comprehensive, very thorough, especially the memo presentation. So when can we expect to get something like that as we look to the new committee coming in, the new mayor coming in, and the obligation on this body's part to put forward pressure to do what we need to do to get this problem fixed?
So I'm trying not to feel offended here, but you have a 5-year strategic plan, which says exactly what we are going to do, but we can't get to the end game until we put certain things in place. So we have 5 years worth of goals. We've told you which years we're going to do it. And we've told you which subgroups and which things and which data that we'll collect. So what you asked us to create was the percent every year of every grade reading at or above grade level, grades 1 through 9 in both math and ELA. Students and growth in ELA. The percent of ELL students who have made progress determined by the access and the WIDA tests. So you asked us to track that, so we are starting to do that. So that's the English language learner test that tells them what level of service they can or exit out of that service. So we'll be able to cross-reference that with our MCAS data. The percent of students mastering algebra standards by the end of grade 8, the percent passing common assessments by grade level, department, and course, the percent mastering writing, completion, and mastery of standards by grade level each year, students graduating college, career, and civic ready, and percent access of students to inclusive learning environments, types of courses, advanced and accelerated learning pathways, tracked by subgroup pathways and courses. the percent of students disaggregated in advanced courses, reduction in opportunity gaps to ELA and math, percent student participation in enrichments, arts, and athletic, student well-being survey connectedness, favorability data, student culture experience results, those went out today, the connectedness data, and narrative and qualitative summary of student-focused feedback groups. Percent discrimination reports and substantiated issues related to enrollment, percent bullying reports and substantiated reports, growth in SEL selected competencies and portrait of a learner competencies, percent improvement in attendance, reduction of chronic absenteeism, student discipline rates disaggregated by subgroups, communication reach and family engagement, metrics on volunteering, attendance and conference attendance, parent academy results, family engagement surveys, the number of city, business, and nonprofit agency partnerships, alumni engagement, help desk ticket completion, and budget alignment priorities completion. These are the things you asked us to collect on, and we are. So we can report to those to you as they are emergent throughout the year.
Thank you for that very long list. Those are a great set of action items that are going to get us further closer to where we need to be. My point about this is, why don't I see it here? I would love to see us just pull out, and specific to assessments, because that's what this presentation is about. We're looking at student assessment, and we're acknowledging many of the deficits that we're seeing, where students' progress is not as strong as we would like it to be. This is an area, an identified area, pervasive and persistent across a number of years, across districts, across our nation, quite frankly. And so it does deserve to have its own action plan. So I think this is the moment. Why not? We put it out there and we see how close we can get to that target, and how long it takes us to get there, and how much it's going to take.
I will say, just in specific to math, the math pathways that we're developing, I think, is the action plan, and it's very comprehensive and has all of those pieces addressed in it, and it's a multi-year piece. I imagine that as we go through these curriculum reviews and do the self-studies, not that we'll have pathways for every single content area, but something to that effect, where we take a look at like what we learned from the self-study, look at the data and the action plan systemically across the district. So I hope that helped.
And again, I think sorry, Rajiv, I see you wanting to fight it. I think it's great that we have this action plan oriented way of reviewing the data. I'm saying let's do that for the glaring elephant in the data. So thank you.
Thank you. Rajiv?
Sorry, so just I think to be a little more clear in my previous question, right? I actually see MTSS as that next step. So my thinking about how this is going to go over the next 5 years is, we have common assessments, we have common curricula, we know how students are doing. The challenge I think that we then face is, how do we, especially for entire subgroups that are lagging, how do we provide that support? But even bringing it down to individual students, which we should, how are we going to provide a student who is struggling in math in grade 3 with the right level of support? And I think that's where MTSS comes in. We don't yet have it in place. I know we have pockets of success. Those are still very much pockets of success. It's going to take a tremendous effort to put MTSS in place everywhere. But I do think of that as we have the curriculum, now what? Right, step. And at some point, and it may not be next year, it may be the year after, it would be great to be able to see, like across the district, what benefits are we seeing from investments in MTSS, because it will not be cheap and it will not be easy. But what are we seeing? And then specifically, what are we seeing for subgroups? Because I fully agree with what Tamika said in terms of this is a national issue. It's also a very local issue, because we're seeing the challenges in Newton. So with the investments we've been making so far, predating Dr. Nolan, right? What have we achieved? And I think the answer across the board is not as much as we would have liked to. Personally, I think MTSS can get us there, right? And in this kind of assessment, if we're looking at academic progress across Newton, right, independent of MCAS or STAR, kind of bringing everything together, will we be able to say, hey, look, we have interventionists, we have specialists, we have educators who have come in and really provided the support at the individual student level, and here's the trajectory. They're back on track. We're seeing this work. In some cases, it might be we've identified that there is a specific issue that does require special education or something more significant, and we've been able to identify that. So I think, Dr. Nolan, I think that is where we want to be, right? I think we're all impatient to get there, but we also are going to, kind of on a tangential but important topic, when the new school committee is talking about the budget again, I think there's going to be that need for additional investment. What are we doing to help students in various subgroups or at the individual level to cross that achievement gap? And I think identifying some of those up front is going to be important. In the last, fairly challenging budget discussion, at a certain point, we had a kind of a breakout of here's what MTSS will cost, and it's an investment and it is not cheap. And I think those are the things we'll want to articulate again to try and make the case to the entire community for why we need to do this. So.
Thank you for saying that. If I may, Mr. Chair, I'm concerned too, because we have suffered in the district several years of budget cuts to that effect. I'll just use the Bigelow School as an example. So there's literally only 1.6 of a math interventionist at our Title I middle school that has the subgroups with the most need. So while I have great faith in our teachers in the absence of reliable curriculum assessment and no intervention services, I just don't know how. I think they're teaching their hearts out. I think we have to provide more for them. So I really appreciate you saying that.
Anping?
Time might be running out, but I could not help to raise a specific issue. Hearing Mayor and Tamika share their concern, I'm thinking possibly let's use the data, as we say, using data to improve outcomes. I'm thinking if you have enough resources, someone to help, on the this document, page 45, I think out of all the data, probably 100 diagrams, this gives me most concerning. 45, the high school race ethnicity for EOA and EOA average score. If you see this, 24 and 25, Hispanic students move a little bit high in terms of meeting and exceeding expectations. Meanwhile, the African American students drop down. And other groups barely maintaining, probably drop a little bit. But this wide gap really shocked me. What happened here? And I do like to see 24 did quite well reach the state average, and suddenly 25, different cohorts, obviously, but still, that's very concerning. If by 10th grade they drop this much, and you could see the trajectory will be very dangerous for them, for these cohorts. So if possible, use the data, do some deep analysis, and possibly use data. This case study could help teachers administrators and staff to understand why the data is so important, why data could help us. Not to blame anybody, but look into it. I don't know, this cohort, could it be 20s, probably at least 20, right? And could it be just 20 and then a group of few students who happen to be very struggling, or there might be other reasons. So I just bother me tremendously if talking about African American students drop way down below the state average. I think that's a huge flag here. What happened? I'm very seriously concerned, and I want to know if you guys can figure out, some deep analysis, probably some graduate students or doctor students who happen to do some project. Okay, please come here. We'll give you data. But of course, we have to make sure that the confidentiality is maintained. But I really want to see what happened. And this could be very meaningful, even significant data analysis as a report and share with district-wide staff to see why the data is so important. We can talk everything about equity, helping the achieve a narrow achievement gap. We can talk, as some people mentioned, that you can talk every year. But if we look at this data and dig out, there might be other reasons we don't know. Certainly, I don't want to make things sound easy. Education phenomenon has a lot of factors, which some are out of our district control, unfortunately. But still, I want to see if there's some other issues, especially we can do something. This is just one example. I will stop here. Thanks.
Thanks, Sanping. I just want to follow up on one point that a couple others have brought up. We certainly did when Emily and I were making the rounds to the schools to meet with staff. It was probably the implementation, execution of curriculum rollout was probably sort of the number one topic of conversation. And I would say, it was, there was less of a philosophical divide and more of just are we executing on this well? I think I could probably say that the biggest piece of feedback was, this was 10 pounds of curriculum stuffed into a 5-pound bag type situation. The really acute question I have is, what is the feedback mechanism from staff? And we think about the big curriculum cycle, and we talk about self-studies and reviews and, implementation. What is the more immediate short-term feedback cycle that you get from staff where, as things are being implemented, as things are being rolled out, maybe when things aren't hitting very well, that you get that back quickly and can, make those small changes as needed?
I can tell you what I did recently. So, we went to our citywide and which consists of all our math middle school teachers throughout the district. And so we did a survey with the teachers to kind of get their feelings on how everything's going in terms of the pilots and the rollouts and so forth. The data that we collected from that, we shared it back with the teachers, and I'm going to be going back to the citywide just to kind of solicit more questioning. So this will be my second time going back and just meeting with teachers on the ground. I think the most valuable piece of feedback that we can get is direct, and Dr. Nolan, myself, Dr. Roundtree, we really do take, I've never seen anything like it before in any district that I've been, where you have central office repeatedly going down to classrooms and talking to people directly. We do surveys. It's not a lack of trying to get the feedback. We are very much interested in the feedback because we want this to be successful. So hearing what the teachers think, and when we can course correct, we absolutely do. But there is the urgency here, and some of the work, has to move forward. I can tell you, in terms of the pilots, we've course correct quite a few times during that process, from when we were going to actually, who was going to be a part of those piloting, to when the piloting are going to take place. Those decisions were made by the department chairs at the high school. So I think there's been some conversation as to, was that a directive from the Office of Teaching and Learning? That was not. So, getting on the ground and meeting with teachers, surveys, we're doing everything we can to hear their voice. And we're hoping that, we can utilize that to improve the process.
Okay. And I'll preface this by saying, I am certainly 100% in favor of this direction that we're heading. I've long argued from these seats up here that, you know, we can't effectively do our job as a governance team if we can't, if we don't have data, we have no visibility to say, how are we doing individually as schools, or how are we doing as a system? So, you know, I certainly don't take away that I'm in any way not in favor of the direction we're heading. You know, Dr. Nolan talked about this being a change management exercise. I think we've certainly, I've gotten the sense we are pushing the boundaries of our organizational capacity to absorb that change. And, you know, I guess maybe we, as we think about being mindful of that, I mean, is there a way that we can say we're there, that we need to, we are pushing, you know, as we think about this, the balance you talked about of, you know, my 8th grader is going to graduate from high school in 4 years, and you don't have 4 years to, you know, a 5-year, the 5th year doesn't help her. And so I get that sense of urgency. And I mean, how do we really find that balance of we're pushing as hard as we can push to implement change, or we're at our limits at the moment, and we need to either slow the pace or
I think
whatever.
it's dialogue. I think it's having those conversations that I was just speaking of. I can tell you, like, for example, with the math pathways, we devised from the district level, like a foundation of like what we saw the implementation to be. And so that we shared those out with key individuals, principals, department chairs. And so they said, time out, like this works and this doesn't work. Can we talk about it? And we've made those, and we continue to make those course corrections. Sometimes I think it's really hard for the average teacher in the district to really understand the complexity of all the things that are going on. But doesn't mean that the work isn't important and it's not happening. So I would just say that we continue to have those conversations and get feedback. I don't know if you wanted to add anything else, Anna.
I guess I just want to say, you know, this committee set out some very targeted things for us to accomplish, and I'll just use reduction of achievement gaps as just one component. In order for this district to have done that, we had to implement some sort of data system and assessment system. Then we realized at the elementary level that we didn't have common planning time into which that teachers could even look at the data together or intervene together. So we spent last year changing that. Now, through the NSF's help, we are training teacher teams to know what to do with that data, because in a district that did not have that expectation, many teachers have booked a long career here without having to do that kind of fine-tuning, the drilling down that Ping has just asked for. Like many districts, the data just washes over people. The MCAS report happens. Maybe there's some corrective action, maybe there's not. So what you asked us to do is put legs on this, and that has like a building process. And we're now at the place where we have to say, this thing we've done for a long time, is it actually working? And that is the hardest conversation of all, because a lot of people, you know, I loved the things I taught, right? And when MCAS came in and showed me maybe I wasn't hitting the mark, I had to like reckon with myself. We're at that reckoning period now. And I want to say that, so elementary has those components now. Middle and high school do not have those components. So I just want to level set everyone's expectations that we are moving as quickly as we can. But what kind of district do we want to be? We don't want to alienate our teachers. We also don't want to alienate our parents, and we want to serve our children well. It is an interactive dialogue. There has to be a change agenda. There's a lot of resistive forces, whether they're finances or working conditions negotiations. So we can't even survey our teachers on their working conditions in this district. So I can't even write a survey saying, so how is the pace going? So I'm a little bit betwixt and between. We can ask about curriculum deployments because that is not a subject of mandatory bargaining. So these focus groups, I appreciate. I hope the new school committee continues to have those focus groups. We have focus groups. We also do walkthroughs all the time. How's it going? It's a great time to see the teachers and to hear from them. And we hear all the things. We hear like, thank goodness you got us something and we can start to address these issues. And then we hear, don't move my cheese. I want to keep doing the things that I was doing. I want to just point out that all of your principals set targeted achievement-based goals on the very data that you're asking to see. Those gaps are the subject of those plans. Dr. Roundtree and Dr. Farag are checking every 90 days, what is the progress on those? So you are prompting me though to think and to ask our new committee, how would they like to hear about that? Because it's a long list, you heard, how are they going to want to hear about that? I made a list of brown bag lunches while we sat here of things that we can do to inform the committee so that we have the kind of public meeting that really shows the things you want. I think we're right between the traditions, right? The MCAS report is a tradition, and we worried if we didn't do it, would you miss it? And would you think we were trying to pull a fast one while we were doing some other things? So we're just going to have to ask our new committee, and what do we want? What do we want? And, what does that mean? On Ping, just to assure you, we can drill down into who are those students and then cross-reference it with their STAR data and then cross-reference it with their grades and their attendance. And we are doing that right now. So that is happening. We just have some concerns about how meaningful is MCAS now? What is the state cooking up in terms of those end of course assessments that they mentioned to us that put Emily and I in a little bit of a cold sweat? Because here we are talking to our teachers about teacher curated common assessments. So we're in this weird time period. And we're just going to keep bringing you all the data that we said we would in the strategic plan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you very much. It was a long time in the hot seat there, so much appreciated and very helpful.
Always our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Jill, are you still back there?
All right.
We have some exciting policies.
All right, we have 4 policy proposals, all first reads. Hopefully we can do this efficiently.
Do you mind if we start with the school food and nutrition since Amy Mistro's online?
Oh.
Okay.
Yes, quite, certainly.
Jill, you want to take the lead or Amy?
I'm going to give this one over to Amy because she's the one that got ahead of this.
Okay, this is Amy Mistro, our Director of Business Operations, and she oversees school food and nutrition programs here. Hi, Amy. I think you're muted.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for your time and consideration. I've submitted a memo to you and a draft policy. We're trying to get ahead of the administrative review that DESE is having Newton undergo this year, which will be a comprehensive assessment of our compliance with all of the USDA regulations, some of which we need a little tweaking on. This is one that in looking at 3 districts that Chartwell's works with and has recently gone through administrative reviews was cited on each of their critical action plans. So it's an easy fix for us to adopt now. In working with Jill, we looked at possibly amending an existing policy that we have, but Jill felt that this standalone policy would create greater transparency for what we're trying to do. Happy to answer any questions if the memo or that brief explanation left you with lingering questions.
Yeah, just to follow up on a standalone policy, MASC also did, the Mass Association of School Committees that does that, of which we're a member of their manual policy program, I guess, for lack of a better term. They do create some templates for most policies, not all. And they did, we were going through this process, we actually did discover one. We've yet to see any other district that has rolled it out, but that I think we're on the forefront of this in the sense that it's coming from this audit. But it sounds like there has been an ask for it based on the fact that there's a template. So while I agree it's a better standalone policy, I can't take all the credit for it.
Mm-hmm.
And could you just confirm, because we do get this question from time to time from families, this policy and what's being driven at the state level is entirely driven around students with disabilities, and it is a, ADA really compliance, and it doesn't have anything to do with religious or other modifications that might be sought.
Correct. This policy is directly from DESI's audit and guidance around this one particular issue when they're doing their, I don't know the full extent of their audit. That's Amy's area of expertise, but this came out of their review of what they called civil rights policies, basically, and it's around providing accommodations under the ADA and Section 504 of the law. So yes, disabilities.
Great. Thank you. It's just helpful clarification. Victor, do you have a question?
You actually answered the question, so I'll just, yeah, thank you.
One step ahead of you, buddy. Any other questions?
The only one thing I was going to add, and Amy's already done this as well, is it's not just the policy, it's actually what the district is doing in terms of actually implementing this and communicating it. So that's also being in the works as we speak. Some of it's already been done and some sort of forms and an information sharing process we're following up on. I know that was a feedback question about the implementation of the policy, which has already begun to materialize.
If I can just clarify, the policy is new, the expectation is not. So where we have needed to, we have certainly provided meal modifications and continue to do so. We have, to Jill's point, updated the website on the food and nutrition pages so that it's clearer for families.
I also just want to let you know that in your packet, you have feedback from the CPAC as well, just in terms of what their major concerns were, which they lie in the procedural execution of this. So when we get into, particular procedures that might happen and the whens and the hows do you do it, that's how the CPAC will inform us, and we'll work with them on that, just as we did with competency determination. So similar, the procedures really need to be collaborative and take into account the stakeholders. So they pulled their families who might be impacted by this policy, and that was the feedback in your packet.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yep. Victor?
This might be beyond the scope, so that's fine. I understand this is ADA related to Section 504. With regards to, say, our Orthodox Jewish community and those religious ones, what is there a comparable process that's going to be fall later on, or is that something that's not prompted by DESI yet?
Has not been prompted by DESI yet in terms of this audit and this practice.
All right, take that offline. Thank you.
Amy, do you want to address the religious food scenario per DESI? Because we do get asked this like daily.
We do get asked quite a bit. It is not a requirement to address any cultural or religious requests for meal modifications. I will say that in the 23 schools that we service in Newton and some of the physical challenges that we deal with every day with our kitchens, it's challenging to just get out the 6,000 plus meals that we do every day to try to create additional differentiation beyond the menu that we provide would be exponentially more challenging.
I also just want to point out that for things like kosher and halal, we don't have kitchens in a lot of the schools anyway, so they're pre-packaged in other places. And finally, not to be the business bureaucrat here, but we did just go out to bid for a 5-year food contract with a vendor, and this was not in that RFP. To do that now, we would have to scrap Chartwell's, and also go out to bid again, which I think when we do go back out to bid, we should include these things if that's important at that time, but knowing it's not going to change our kitchen situation, which means that we may not get bids that are responsive to that, since they have to be made in a different location. So I just want to be realistic about what our constraints are. This is not do I want every kid to get what they need when they need it? Yes, I do. But this isn't a place where physically I can produce those results right now.
Okay. Should we move on to the other?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes, Cameo.
The remaining ones are fairly straightforward. 2 are related, 1 is not. MASC does it as a periodic review of policies and recommends changes. Sometimes they're in response to a changed law. Sometimes it's just best practice in terms of ever-changing environment. One of the policies, I'm going to start with the fundraising one. Anna and Amy already redid a lot of our policies and guidelines, as you recall, last year of booster and fundraising organizations and all that went into that. And they already incorporated the piece about games of chance, which the AG has weighed in on and said most can't do it. Boosters can. Under these circumstances, it's already in the guidelines, everything that went before at the very end of last year. Our policy about student fundraising activities didn't explicitly state that. So I just recommended we actually just add the sentence onto that, just to make it crystal clear. But the other related policies, for instance, the staff one, we actually as a district don't allow staff members to fundraise. So it's not really relevant in that sense if they can't fundraise on behalf of, solicit on behalf of these other organizations, then kind of, you don't really need to say that they can't do raffles in that vein as well. So that's this. I don't know if you want to ask questions about that one before I move on.
Cool.
Yeah.
One question, 2 comments. What's canning?
I'm sorry?
Going door to door.
Oh, canning. Or when, I see it as when somebody stands outside like a Dunkin' Donuts with a can for Little League or something.
Okay. Okay. 2 comments that I think might be worth considering as add-ons to this. One is to make very clear that no student would be disadvantaged in their activities should they choose not to engage in fundraising. And I want to raise that because in the past, it was very clear in one of the athletic fields that if you didn't meet certain goals with regard to fundraising to support that team, that your status in terms of playing time and otherwise on that team would be affected. And so I'd like to have some protection there for the students, regardless of how much they choose to engage in this. That's one point. The other point.
Illegal.
Hmm?
It's just not.
I mean, it's
legal.
illegal and
Yeah.
maybe it's more in terms of guidelines or
Yep.
implementation as opposed to this policy that governs student themselves doing fundraising as opposed to
Interesting.
organizations.
Leave it to your handling of that. The other is the use of third-party organizations in the solicitation and handling of the money, and therefore taking a percentage of the monies that are raised. I think we should, I don't know if we should prohibit that or should explicitly require that such things be subject to the review of the superintendent.
So I believe that we utilized our own platform as part of our rehaul so that we're not using those third parties that take a fee.
If that's the case, then we
Part of,
have to.
what system is it? My School Bucks.
Yeah.
Okay.
We switched to that.
Good.
So we
It
can
was-
have more.
It's like all this gray hair from last year, so.
Good.
Okay,
Thanks.
Tamika?
So I want to very strongly echo and second, not second officially, but you know what I mean, colloquially, Paul's suggestion that we embed protections for the student, that this is a voluntary effort and that their lack of participation will incur no penalties, whatever. I leave the words to you, but I do think it's important to put in the school committee's policy if that's what the school committee intends to attach.
Okay.
Oh, and second, I note that there's a change to the policy subcommittee, very limited remaining days, that Emily Prenner and Alicia are on the policy subcommittee, whereas Paul was not. So question as to when that change happened.
2 meetings?
For the meeting on this.
Yeah, recently, yes.
Paul stepped down.
And then we'll put that back on for vote next meeting. And then the other 2, one's a new policy and one's a revision of an existing policy that was very outdated. Again, came to the attention from the mask recommendations. One was just to give something that we're already doing but to put it actually in policy, which is around basically security and access to grounds and buildings, to be more explicit. And that's EBAC. And so that's a new policy that, again, that MASC has rolled out. And as part of that, we were reviewing, and there was a recommended revision to policy KI for visitors to schools. We took a look at ours because ours seemed to have had a lot of more content, but a lot of that content was outdated. So we updated it, took what MASC had proposed for revised policy, included some of the things from our existing policy, updated that we like to do here in Newton, and Newtonize it, as we call it, so that we're not losing some things that are important or have been spelled out by us. And so those two are before you for review.
Mayor Fuller?
Totally supportive of the idea of these policies. They're important and necessary and good to update and in one case, make a new one. Couple thoughts that we might need a little conversation. One question is in at least the elementary schools, there's this period where the formal school day ends, but after school starts. And what terminology is that? Outside of school hours or still during school hours? So I think just think that through. I know the question, I don't know the exact answer, but think it through. I think of the after school programs often running parallel with some rentals, and it seems like it all works out, but I just think it through a little bit and be clear. Two other thoughts. One is we're working well, I think, through a new the new Lincoln Elliott has the Newton Community Stage in the auditorium. And the auditorium, oddly enough, is not part of the school building. It's actually a city, has that part of the facility. But obviously, it's very, very important to Maura Morse and faculty and students. And I think Dave Stickney and Josh Morse with Maura and Paul Gannon are working well. I think they need to add some more ways where if somebody's coming into the community stage, they're not somehow drifting into the school building. But again, I think some things are being worked out there that we should at least acknowledge. And I think they will all work out. I'm not too worried. But it's a little bit of a unicorn in our school buildings. The other thing, just to think through the grounds part, for obvious reasons, it makes particularly elementary school teachers very uncomfortable when other kids are playing on a playground at recess. I get it completely. At the same time, neighborhood kids who are, let's say, 3 and are with a caregiver often do go to the neighborhood playground during the day. And so there's just, I think and they're often these school playgrounds are not fenced in. So I think we just should think about this just a tad more and make sure I'd love to have this looked at by the City Hall team and just make sure we've got the words just right and it's working really well for our educators and safety and security, but also works for the community and that we get it just right. So I'd actually like a little time just to run it by, the the Nicole Banks and Josh Morses of the world.
So my
and
understanding is that
Paul
we've always had the practice, because this came up during COVID, of during the school hours, other children and neighborhood folks are not supposed to be on our grounds. And so
Yeah.
that's not a new thing. It's just codifying it. I also, yeah. I think that's
Again, the
basically it.
practice and the policy sometimes are, there's thankfully, I would say, goodwill and people know of the regular kiddo who's 4 years old who tends to show up in the playground sometimes with mom or dad or nanny or whoever it is, or grandpa or grandma. So I just like to take this back and just work with your team. So I've just asked for that time. And again, I'm not worried about this, but it's I'd just like to work it through with everybody.
The other thing I would say is this is a general policy, and there are, what is the language in here exactly? But basically, there can be situations set up, implemented with the approval of the superintendent. So it's the policy, but then use can be given or provided with that. So if there's some carve outs, that's just also an option.
I hear you. And again, I'm not trying to say no. What I'm trying to say is, can we just work with you and your team and
Happy
make
to,
sure it
happy
all
to take
works
feedback
well?
that you have for us.
I just know that, for example, we worked very closely with your team at NECP to get some signage up, because the NECP playground is right next to, I'll call it a non-school playground. And we had to think it through, and it all worked beautifully. But some of these things sometimes are a little tricky, and we're trying to do right by the students and the teachers and do right by the community.
So how would you like to proceed?
If I don't think either of these made it over to the team. So let's just set I can bring them back, or if Jill, you can send them over.
When you mean the team, are you talking about the lawyers, or are you talking about Parks and Rec?
So there's maybe both.
I'm just asking because I wouldn't necessarily send something to a different city department.
No, again, nor would you. That's why I'm raising it here as something just to think through. I'd say Josh Morse and Nicole Banks and Paula Gannon, and sure, Jonah or Allie or somebody. Let's just take a look, and we'll all work together on this. Again, we can collaborate and just see if it's all working well for all of us.
Okay. Yeah, I would just say if you have proposed changes, to get them over as quickly as possible. And if Jill, you could distribute them to committee members as quickly as possible. I mean, I think something like the Lincoln Elliott situation is exactly why this policy is of paramount importance right now.
Yeah, that's why. So we'll do our best. We've got that holiday coming up. That's many of us are taking some time off right around it, but got it.
Tamika?
Thank you. So I think the mayor makes one excellent point and raises one important issue. So the excellent point is, in spite of the policy, the practical effect is that you're going to have kids or people using the grounds of the schools that are, whether it's the playground facilities or just walking their dogs. I think we do need to have a little bit more of a holistic, kind of nuanced approach to what that looks like. The policy might live, but the protocol might be the place where there's some give and flex. Because, when I came to Newton with my 3-year-old twins, we were directly across from Lincoln Elliott, the old Lincoln Elliott. And that was where we spent a bulk of those squirrely hours. So Just think that through a little bit more. And with regard to the Lincoln Elliott project, might I suggest that the more kind of comprehensive way to tackle who has access when is to together devise an MOU that covers, that has a general understanding of how we handle this space that we're kind of sharing, though it's largely owned or managed by the city. Hold on.
We
one sec.
already shared that with your team.
Yep. So I would say work on that MOU. I heard you that you guys were talking about it. Bring that back to the school committee so that we can work that up and approve it.
Bad news, we're working with your team, but it doesn't actually get approved by the school committee since it's a city resource, but happy to share it and brainstorm with you. How about that?
And I would say that the policy subcommittee ought to have some brainstorming into that process as well. Thank you.
This is probably nitpicking, but it's not clear to me how elections come under this, when the polling place is in a school, under whose authority. Maybe that's another MOU. I don't know, but probably should mention it because those people actually come onto the grounds.
But they come with a police officer
Yeah,
to
or whatever
guard
it is,
that.
but
I mean, I guess I would, again, because policies, the what and the why, in here, it's, we can maybe revisit the language, but when we say, those visiting for recognized business, hold on, under procedures promulgated by the superintendent. So I just think that there's room for procedures or MOUs or guidelines or what have you that will actually address these carve-out exceptions, because we don't, I would just say it's policy. We wouldn't want specifics like that in.
So it's my belief that that exists already enshrined in practice and policy here. We get a memo from the mayor's office about upcoming elections. It then gets handed to the police. It then gets handed to the principal. It then gets distributed by Aisha. So there is a thing that we do, and it comes with security. I mean, the difference for Lincoln Elliott is the building is wide open. So we do have to manage when the hours are. We're responsible for the kids until the school day ends. It's woogie with the after-school programs, but we don't run those. So
Oh, yeah.
they're
I would say that
renters.
They still all fall within this community use vendor, like all the language
Mhm.
that's in the policy, but it's not an extension of school day.
Okay, any other thoughts? All right, that concludes, good? Okay, that concludes our agenda for this evening. We are adjourned.